Today, we're just going to give a few updates, Jim and I, and then we're going to move on to a couple of good friends of the National TIM program, Carl Merkle and Ron Meyers. We're going to explain about this demonstration and practical exercise. I think it was a practical exercise. But anyway, they had a really awesome event out there in Ohio that they're going to share with you. Then we're going to talk about this emerging problem. I'm sure everyone's on everyone's radar screen. Our own Joe Tebo from our team. Joe brings a big benefit to our TIM team. He's been with us about 2 years now, but he's got that really boots on the ground fire experience, and we're going to talk about these battery fires and what he's working on and what he's uncovered and information he's going to be able to provide. And then Jerry Prete from the Montana TIM program is actually he's from the fire services trade, but he's an instrumental piece of the Montana TIM effort out there in the rural part of the nation. So we look forward to having Jerry. He's provided us with our rural TIM research project with a lot of very good information. So next month, this month Talking TIM sort of. It's the fourth Wednesday of every month, but I always think of it, maybe the last Wednesday of every month, and this month it sort of snuck up on us. So we haven't fully developed our agenda for next month, but we do want to have a discussion, 15, 20-minute discussion, interactive discussion with on the National Unified Goal. What should we be using the National Unified Goal and its 18 strategies more effectively. But we wanted your input. We don't want it, we want it to be our goal, right? The TIM Nation's goal, not us. And we also want to. There's a number of products that we have just recently developed and been approved that we want to share with you. So we're going to be providing a little bit more on that. But we're open on the other topics. We've been bouncing around a little bit, such topic as TIM and work zones, TIM and special events planning, TIM as it relates to large events. This is different than your day-to-day event, right? On a typical crash, and then TIM with weather events. So if you have any ideas, something specifically you'd like to hear, or if you have something that you might think the rest of the community could benefit by a presentation from your experience and what you're doing in your jurisdiction. With that, I'll pass it over to my good buddy Jim Ostrich.
Okay, Paul, thank you, and welcome to everyone again. Another great Talking TIM webinar for you here today. I want to quickly update you on Crash Responder Safety Week. That's coming up quick, second week in November, as you see there, the 14th to the 18th. The overall theme, respect your roadside heroes, and there's going to be a webinar, and hopefully as the last one last year when we really launched officially Crash Responder Safety Week. And the webinar on July 13th is going to cover mass media and high visibility strategies. That's the webinar with the all states like we've done in the past. And we've had really a higher degree of participation, which is music to Paul, Joe, and my ears. And just couldn't do it without you. So keep it up. And of course, I mentioned the webinar again during the week of CRSW on the 14th at 1 p.m. Don't miss that, because there's going to be a lot of high-level folks endorsing, making remarks, and hopefully the big one that's very near and dear to our hearts is the proclamations. So if you haven't started your proclamations yet, get a move on, because we want to double it if possible, from 12 states to 24 states, and even more if possible. So here's the map. You can see it. Is your state green or is it blue? Participating states and states that are planning. So the states in gray we have not heard from yet, but I'm sure you're doing your best. So next is well, our contacts, of course, and in the next few slides here. Hey, Adam, did we load the? There we go. Okay, thank you. So making huge progress. We're still. I just can't hit that 600,000. It's driving me nuts, and I'm sure a lot of you. But this report that you're seeing here is actually in May. There's another one that for various technical reasons we weren't able to get to you, so I dare say we're probably in the 590 range now, total responders trained. This is the sad news, as always. We're now up to 27 line of duty deaths, responder line of duty deaths struck by, as you can see. Police again, higher than fire, towing, and road service technicians, service patrols, and public works. Please continue to promote the TIM training. As my brother Joe Tebo always says, together we're saving lives, and we got to keep doing this, ladies and gentlemen. The maps, real quick. Here you can see the breakdown of the total in-person trained plus the web-based trained, leading to that 586 plus. We do have well, I'll make an announcement here in a minute. Here's the map showing the totals per state. And you should know these numbers. Most of you on this webinar every month, you should know these numbers. Many of you receive the national TIM training status report and maps, and you should be utilizing the statistics, the data to your advantage. Here's the goal map of 55% that we set last year, and what we have, I think we're at 26 still, maybe 27 that are above at or above the 55%. And bar chart, we got 1 million plus or more than 1 million plus to train, and it's taken us 10 years to get here. I know I sound like a broken record, but hey.
First they can pull up.
Like Paul said. What's that, Paul?
Yeah.
Thought I heard somebody, sorry.
Yeah, that wasn't me, Jim.
Okay. Thanks. So here is the tables.
Move. I have Dave move up. Yeah, if you want.
Okay. Not sure who's talking there, but we love you. Anyway, the tables here showing the performance by state. I'm trying to block out the table on the right. Makes me sad. Just being honest, and we're among family here. Just not promoting the training as we all should. And here again is the top 10, and it's usually the same states that are producing from month to month. So one of the announcement I was going to make is at some point here in the near, weeks, couple of months or so, we're going to be announcing some FHWA sponsored train-the-trainers, both virtual train-the-trainers as we did a year ago, and we're going to be doing some in-person train-the-trainers. So let us know if you're interested, especially for the in-person train-the-trainers, but we won't be able to accommodate every state to, conduct a train-the-train in every state, but we certainly would like to hear from those states that are, your training bench or your cadre of trainers is nil, and maybe that's why you're not training. You're not progressing, I should say, you're not progressing as strongly as some of the other states. So I just wanted to let you know, Paul, Joe, and I will be announcing that, our contractor, through an email announcement. And with that, Paul, back to you.
Thanks, Jim. Our next speaker is Carl, Merkle, and Ron. I just lost connection. Of course, good timing. I just started, lost connection, but I still can speak. Rod Meyers from, forget the name of his towing company, but they've been long friends of the TIM program, both the national program in Ohio. They've been provided a ton of leadership in Ohio in particular, and both have interacted with them, Jim and I, for a long time. So with that, I'll stop talking and turn it over, I guess, to Carl and Ron.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's kind of ironic there that Jim was talking about, how things have dropped off, and we, help them getting out there, provide some, train-the-trainers. We're actually, due to COVID, and I'm sure this probably just didn't happen to us in Ohio, but, we definitely had a severe loss in interest of training. So, we'll be one of those ones requesting that. But anyhow, Ron and I we worked together here with an exercise. It was a research project that went on here in this between the UAS Center and ODOT. So Ron, he provided the equipment as tow trucks and got us a fire service. And what we did was took advantage of not only the use of the UAS in traffic incident management, but to improve our training, we will actually inject a lot of these videos, and we probably have 8 hours worth of training in the type of videos that we actually captured. So what we're going to actually do is most of our presentation is not us just speaking, but we want to show you what we actually captured during this exercise. So with that, Ron, do you have anything before we move on?
No, it was just a great opportunity because we took advantage of funding on the drone project, and they allowed us to basically do a correct TIM event and one that maybe was not quite correct. And then they actually all came back in with cameras and drones and let us film it again at night. So we just have a huge amount of data. They initiated, when we did the first event, they initiated a trip event. So the TMC was able to actually establish a clock. So we have a nice timeline, communication, and it's going to take us just a little bit to get through all that. But I think we have some tremendous visuals and actual data that we'll be able to share with everyone, and that's our goal, to share it with everybody. And it'll be some updated pictures. They gave us a great opportunity.
And actually, the slide that's up right now is actually from that. We used it as it was a rural setting, And this is actually one of our drone pictures here up on the slide now. So next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of overview. Like I just mentioned, we lost instructors due to COVID. We've had some turnover in our office, people in new positions. I do a lot of the training, but down in our traffic management section, we're actually getting a consultant. We're going to go into our regions of the state and actually solicit, try to get people to attend TIM meetings within our quadrants of the state, and try to get everybody into the table. Like Jim said, for years now, we've been beating on this and trying to get it, but it's not only nationally, right here just in our states, just getting everybody to the table is still a struggle. And I just want to give you an answer. I don't want to ramble on, but just this past Saturday, I taught a class. And it was a rural fire department, had fire and EMS there and some DOTs. And during the class, I was asked about the pink signs. So are they effective? And I explained the situation about, yes, they are effective. And during the last 15 minutes of class, they were toned out. And there was a group already on scene, and the chief that was in the class, they radioed back to the station and said that, hey, the chief just ordered them to put the pink signs out. They had not done it before. So, just another section of the state that we was be able to pick up and got somebody involved, and just from the training that we had, we getting the pink signs out there to slow these people down. So, and then also we have done some outreach. We have some governor's support, and you see on the vest there it says OTIM. That is just because it's Ohio Traffic Incident Management. We tailored it to a lot of highest settings, and so anyway, go to the next slide, and you'll hear what our governor has to say to support us.
Hello, I'm Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. Welcome to Ohio Traffic Incident Management, or OTIM. If you're here, I know you're committed to improving traffic incident management in Ohio, so thank you. Thank you for that commitment. OTIM is a planned, coordinated, and multidisciplinary process to clear traffic incidents as safely and as quickly as possible. As first responders, we want you to be safe while you're helping people and saving lives. We all want to reduce the risk of a secondary crash. We certainly don't want you or anyone else to get hurt. Again, thanks for all that you do. We are a stronger, safer Ohio because of you.
So, since he put this out, he just put us out this last fall, and what we are doing is we actually lead this in in each of our classes as a lead-in slide, and then that gives them, how our governor feels, and gives them the feeling of importance of a responder out there and how he's supporting us in the OTIM program. Next slide. Okay, this is actually an overview.
For the last 3 years, we've been working with the state of Ohio and various federal agencies to stand up what we call an unmanned traffic management system. And probably the easiest way to think about this is air traffic control for unmanned systems, or drones, as they're commonly known. It gives drones an understanding of where they are in the airspace, who's around them, and what they can do to essentially safely navigate from A to B, all while giving manned traffic the priority. ODOT is at the forefront of essentially establishing what that infrastructure looks like, how we can scale it, grow it, and incorporate it with existing manned air traffic control systems as well.
So we have a Drive Ohio, and what that is, we have a section that we actually do some unmanned vehicles and autonomous vehicles, and anyhow, they have a research center up there, and it's called the Transportation Research Center, and they actually provided a location for us to actually hold this exercise. But Ohio State University and ODOT teamed together with a research, and you know, we exercised utilizing the drones, and you know, see what the capabilities was. Like I said, we had tethered drones versus our other drones. You know, the tethered drone can stay up, as we know, much longer. The other ones, it was actually a cold day. They lasted about 20 minutes in the air. At one time, we had 6 drones in the air. So as you see on there, that's who all was involved in it. We had ODOT operation, ODOT planning and research, or communications, the ODOT UAS Center, Ron's company, Pinetree Towing, the OSU Aerospace Research Center, State Highway Patrol, the Antrim Fire Department, and again, the Transportation Research Center. Ron, you have anything else to add on this?
No, it's just the drones are it's very forward-thinking, and the drones are able to have radiation detection. In this case, the drones are able to read license plates, so they give total situational awareness to the responders. Law enforcement potentially knows who they're dealing with before they get there. And when you just think about getting the road open, if they can get plate readers and read plates, a lot of the crash reports can already be partially filled out before law enforcement gets there, and then they can basically enhance that. We can have data pulled off some of them plates to also help the fire departments with the data collection they have. And then these things can literally be dispatched from almost anywhere and flown remotely. So, you know, some of the forward thinkers are thinking these things could be strategically placed in hot zones. They could be in the back of a pickup or a trunk and be mobily dispatched to whoever gets there. And it's really amazing what they could do. And we'll see another slide here in a minute where they can transmit the image to the cell phone. So all the responders, anyone with a smartphone, will also have a heads up before they get there. I mean, I think it could have a huge impact to help get the road open.
Okay, next slide. Okay, our objectives, you know, they only had the 2-lane road, so we provided a realistic secondary crash in a rural setting. And what we did is, in the morning, we did everything, you know, hopefully as correct as we could. Unfortunately, we had to push us back to our weather of being able to fly the drones. So we lost some of our participants, but we was able to get the point across and enough to be able to hold the exercise. So we'll go through a series of videos here, and then we'll make some comments. Like I say, at one time we had 6 of these drones in the air actually shooting it. I know this wouldn't be a real life scenario, but it's actually give us all the different angles of the accident.
We had also set up a casualty in front of the road being blocked, and the drones were able to let the first responders know that they had a potential patient that they would not be able to see when they arrived on scene because it was on the other side of the casualty. And so that was something unique that it was able to help with.
Okay, this here video that's going to be playing, it's playing here now. This actually, it's being streamlined into our traffic management center. If you look kind of up in the top center of your page. He has that because he's still monitoring his day-to-day traffic in the areas he's got to cover. But you see in the top center the accident that we have out there, which was able to be live streamed in from our UAS, which will be huge on if we have a huge accident where we need to dispatch out any other resources or to let personnel know what way they need to go in to a certain accident to reduce any kind of delay. There you can see in the big screen TV there was on at the end on the right that we focused on that area right there to the right-hand side. Okay, these are just some pictures of just rolling in on scene. Our fire department coming in, turn his wheels, and then coming out and checking the scene. This is stuff that we'll use during our, that we can incorporate it in our TIM training program. So it just gives it more of a realistic and approach, I think, to the training.
We ran this actually in real time once we got everything set up. And the other crazy thing or different was the crash was actually detected by an autonomous vehicle. So an autonomous vehicle was in the queue, and you'll see we had the road blocked and we had a queue established with traffic backup. And then as we proceeded through, at some point, and we may not have all that, be able to show it all, the wreckers would have repositioned the semi-truck after this car was removed so that we could relieve pressure off the queue and get one lane open. And all that video and stuff is going to be able to help us, I think, communicate better to other first responders the importance of trying to give a lane when you can.
So you have your fire, we have the fire going and inspecting the vehicles, checking, for casualties. And like I say, we're just giving you an overview now, but, this year we're just showing where we have our, the highway patrol. One of the things we did when we was showing some of the mistakes is that we had the fire truck rolling up too close to the scene where it's not a buffer area. There's the things that, you see a lot of common mistakes that may happen out at a scene. We're trying to correct that, showing the bad versus this is the way you should do it.
And the trooper that was there, he actually went with a crash report. We actually have video and pictures of him taking measurements. There was communication on the radio of him giving the tow company, permission to move the vehicles. It was trying to show the the cooperation amongst the responding agencies.
This is actually Ron and I were explaining what the process was, and then here we are. This slide, this little short video here. This is us showing what we did was come in there at night. We showed too much lighting, too little lighting. High-vis vest versus no high-vis vest versus partial, so we could point out the importance of the Class 3 vest.
And we brought light towers in and turned the light towers on afterwards, reduced some of the flashing lights. Like I said, we were able to capture a lot of stuff that I think is going to be very helpful so you can actually see the difference, and it's at the same scene. So it's not from different areas or locations. One of the things we had captured that was real interesting was responders walking in shadows, and it's just something you can tell responders be conscientious of at night to try to honestly stay out of a shadow.
And here, this here we brought, we had thermal imaging. If there's a need for that, this kind of gives you an idea. This is what you see utilizing our thermal imaging UAS. So, it's just another piece that we can add. We're in the just like anybody else, we're in the very early stages of the UAS process. But this exercise gives us a great handle, and this research project with Ohio State University is for 1.5 years. So, you know, we're looking at some other things that that we can do to work with them, you know, for future use as well. Next slide. Okay, good, Ron.
Yeah, actually, we've already had some preliminary talks. We're going to try to do a video on distracted driving, and we have some people interested in it. The drone is going to be able to provide funding for us to do that, but we will establish potentially a secondary crash or even a primary crash that was a result of distracted driving, and at the same time we'll be able to implement all the TIM strategies that are necessary to do that. And then we also were looking at possible like a prom night video. If we can put that stuff together, that's something that could be shared with everybody that can't actually hold an in-person or actual demonstration at a high school. They would be able to provide it and at least show it for kids. And we're hoping we capture some stuff out of this that could be incorporated into driver's ed. We got a little ways to go there, but that's one of the things we're working on too.
Okay, this year, this is just some of our still shots that, you know, we had people, we not only had the drone, obviously, we had photographers on the ground shooting all different angles as well. This is kind of how the scene was set up with the truck rollover. And like I say, one thing, and I will let Ron actually, because this is kind of his thing is we went through the TRIP program, our Towing and Recovery Incentive Program. Ron was put on the clock. Even though this was you know, a made-up exercise, he had to get that thing uprighted, those vehicles out of the way, and one lane open within our recommended time, which was, you know, 60 minutes. And needless to say, he got it done. But Ron, you go ahead and elaborate on that.
Right. So, you know, they responded to the wreck. They didn't call us right away, so they called us later, gave us time to respond, start the clock. And actually, we made this as realistic as possible. We had the cars jammed and wedged. We ran into a couple issues that you would have in real life trying to do a recovery, like the blue car was stuck on the semi because we wedged it in there too good. And but we were able to overcome them obstacles. But the idea was to create the timeline and show that within a reasonable amount of time we could get a lane open. And actually within 90 minutes, we had the thing uprighted, hooked up, and was clearing the scene once we were given the okay. Plus, we cleared the queue within that 90 minutes where the tractor trailer rolled over. But it took a lot of coordinated effort, and the idea is to demonstrate that if proper training, procedures, it can be done.
Okay, next slide. Okay, like I say, this year, just like I said, we have a ton. I mean, tons and tons of video. You know, here it is. We got the one lane open. We're showing our traffic and our flagger letting traffic go by. So, and like I say, we didn't even scratch the surface of the amount of still shots and UAS video that we could use. Like I said, we had a tethered unit and 6 drones or 6 UAS in the air at one time.
And they actually flew a drone through the scene a couple times at eye level. And I haven't seen that video yet, but that's got to be pretty awesome.
Well, hey,
yeah, they actually walked right through the zone with that drone, with the UAS.
Wow. Hey, Colin, Ron, we need to go to the next. Oh, you perfect time and questions. Okay. We're going to wait till the end. I told you after 20 minutes I get nervous. So we're going to move on, but we'll do questions. Any questions that are in the chat pod? I don't know if John McClellan just put a couple of questions in there. Carl and Ron, I don't know if you can answer those. Those might be a little bit more technical on UAS than you guys have. You know, that was a great presentation, guys. Really appreciate it. I really love that you guys got the governor to do your comments. That is, you know, come on, I'm calling you, everyone out there. Do that in your state. Get the governor's attention. But, you know, 6 drones at the same time, man, what you guys doing awesome. The only thing I'm going to say, Kyle, you owe Jim, I think it's at least $3. It could be $5 for using the word accident instead of crash. And he charges $1 every time someone uses the word accident instead of crash. So.
Oh, okay. I'm broke
$10
now.
now, Carl. Carl is $10.
Well, I seen a question in the chat or I seen a thing from Dave Wolf in the chat. We do have what they call an OTIM dispatch, or traffic management in operations. They worked on, and Dave was with the contract that done that. And if anybody wants to see our dispatch letter, he'd be glad to help us out with that and share it with anyone.
Yep, Dave's a good man. Okay, thanks, guys. Great presentation. Thanks for sharing. Next up is Mr. Joe Tebo, who is part of the team with Jim and I. Been a super addition with his expertise in fire that he's going to talk a little bit about now. So, Joe.
Hey, Paul. Thanks. Greetings, everyone. Joe Tebo here. Hey, you know, I started looking at the electric vehicle issue, vehicle fires, and, you know, does it have any effect on us, and what effect does it have on us? And then I started receiving lots of messages from peers and coworkers who are experiencing some of these events. And, you know, they were like, you know, we've got to lean forward on this. You know, we've got to do something on this. So, you know, I started to educate myself on some of this stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not an expert on electric vehicles or their fires. Okay. You could squeeze my knowledge into a thimble. Okay. But I know more than the most, and it would behoove everyone who may be exposed to it to take a look at the different challenges that are out there. So looking at Tim, I said, okay, so what's the effects that we have on our timeline here? Well, almost immediately the effects were, you know, extended timelines and an incredible taxation on our resources. So, you know, when we look at the Tim timeline, we can kind of safely say that from the time that it's dispatched until we get to normal flow, or T7, right, in the timeline, you know, that's a huge gray area when we have electric vehicles. And I'm going to show you why. And if you've experienced one of these, you know, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there are many departments out there, whether it's fire, rescue, EMS, towing, recovery, law enforcement, it doesn't matter, who have yet to see one or experience one. But it's coming, right? It's coming, and it's coming quick. So I took a look at the response challenges, and, you know, just some of those, right? So we have an absence of standardized electrical safety disconnect locations on some of these vehicles. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second, and what that means to us. And the very little or kind of gray area on directional and extinguishment, right? We're told, you know, copious amounts of water. Well, that's one thing, right, in an urban area, and totally different animal than when you're in the rural and remote regions. And I'll touch on that a little more too. What most departments have seen up to this point are passenger vehicle fires. You know, your sedan, your small sedan. That's what, you know, what's out there the most, so to speak. But what's coming, what's already out there and coming in huge volumes are these commercial vehicles, right? So you got big vehicles, have big batteries. And big batteries will give you big fires, and that equates to long on-scene time. So we know that the longer that we're out there and exposed to traffic, right, of course our risk gets higher. And then we, you know, begin to deplete our resources. So, you know, T4 in the timeline, you know, T4 in the timeline is when we arrive on scene, you know, and take it from there. And it's quite a challenge. So talk a little bit about the construction of the sedans, if you would, passenger non-commercial vehicles. And it's basically the entire floor pan, right? So everything that you're looking at on the bottom here of this vehicle, this entire flat black surface down here that you're seeing on this vehicle, is the battery tray, as the industry calls them. I call it a battery pan, but it's a battery tray. Now, on some commercial vehicles, right, buses, larger vehicles, the roof is the battery tray. And I'll talk about that a little more also. So one thing we can see by looking at the bottom of this vehicle is that, you know, they're designed to be watertight, element tight from Mother Nature, right? Keep the elements out of there. So keep that in mind, right? So when we have an incident with one of these vehicles, here's the pan, here's the tray. This is what it looks like removed from the vehicle. What we can see on this top side, the black shiny side here on the top, these are actually overheat or thermal blow-offs, if you would, right? That if pressure within that particular category builds because of a thermal runaway, which is when you get an overheat, overcharge of one cell, it ignites, and then it transfers to the next cell block over, if you would, to try to keep it simple, and then it just continues on, and it's a tiger by the tail. But this one here has thermal relief, pressure relief baffles, if you would, on the top that they will give way and they will allow for pressure to blow off, but it also allows for flammable gases and ignition. Some of these things have ports down the side rails of them, round ports, almost looks like a molding port, and they too are designed to exhaust gases and heat. Usually by that time, thermal runaway is already initiated, if not, in full bloom by that point. But that's the battery pan of just your basic sedan model, if you would. When it comes to de-energizing an electric vehicle, right, that's a challenge. Why is it a challenge? Well, take a look at this, right? Every one of these red arrows on here is pointing towards the electric disconnect for that particular model vehicle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's a dozen of them here, or 13 or so, and you can see every one of them in a different spot. And you see some of these arrows pointing to the roof. Well, it's really not, it's not the roof. It's below, it's down inside there, either on the center console or in the rear seating area. But you can see that there's there's no standardization. So when you roll up on one of these and you need to start taking some offensive action, let's say it's not a fire, it's a rescue scenario, and you need to start cutting. You need to do a door pop, roof flat, dash roll, whatever the case may be. We're dealing with high voltage and low voltage applications here. So we want to make sure we disconnect. But how do you do that, in the heat of the moment? Well, there's several apps out there, phone apps and websites, where you can bring it up on your phone real quick, the make and model, if you know what that is, and they'll kind of point you towards where the high voltage, low voltage disconnects are. In the heat of the moment, it's tough. How they say it, it's tough to remember that your initial task was to drain the swamp when you're up to your neck in alligators, right? So, this is what, we're being confronted with out there. And these are just the sedans. So, de-energizing the vehicle, is a huge challenge and a safety risk, because stranded energy kills, right? Talking 100 volts to 200 volt DC for your hybrid, plug-in hybrid vehicles, the earlier models, even some of today's models. But primarily it's 400 to 800 volts DC for electric only, right? And you think, well, it's DC current, right? Well, most subway trains, light rail trains, they operate at 750 volts DC. So if you're not willing to go out there and touch the third rail, you're going to want to exercise some caution when you're dealing with electric vehicles and the power that they have. They maintain a charge, very similar to a capacitor bank, if you're familiar with the capacitor. So that energy is just sitting there waiting for someplace to go. And if that someplace to go happens to be through your arm, down your body, and into your feet to the ground, you can see 3 to 8 milliamps. It's a thousandth of an amp, to stop the human heart. So you can see it's a very deadly situation if we don't approach it cautiously. Now we have crashes that don't have a fire, right? There's no fire involved. You roll up, you got the car crushed. You got maybe it's not even a what we call a major crash, right? And that is, maybe there's some wheel damage. One of the wheels, maybe the car slid to the side, hit the curb, busted the wheel assembly up. right? And then, along comes, towing recovery, you folks, right? You all get there and, you do your thing with, moving the vehicle. And, the kicker is that a lot of these vehicles, there's an independent motor at each wheel. And there's a computer looking at these wheels and how they turn and what the demand is on them. And when you have a vehicle that's designed for four-wheel motion, but only three wheels are turning and the other one has faulted, it creates confusion, I'll say, within the computerized system. And what it does is it overheats or can overheat some of the battery modules inside that tray. And then once that occurs, then you get thermal runaway. And once you have thermal runaway, well, it Katie bar the doors, because copious amounts of water is what's recommended, but doesn't always work. So we've had vehicles that have been pulled up to a rollback recovery vehicle, and that vehicle's chugging on down the road, heading towards the yard, when suddenly the electric vehicle on board bursts into flame. Because thermal runaways occurring, it may have occurred when the vehicle was moved and pulled up onto the back. Multiple ways that it could have ignited. And there's cases where these things have been stored in the yard for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, never were involved in a fire, but suddenly ignite. So, these are some of the challenges, that we have out there that we have to be aware of. We have to lean forward on. Remember when airbags first came about in vehicles, right? And it took a while before, fire service, rescue service realized that, we need to do something about this, because you can't just cut off a steering column, or you just can't cut the A post, B post anymore, or airbags are going to be pinning you. As a matter of fact, I know a couple of firefighters who were seriously injured, and I believe there was one fatality back in the early days of airbags. So they didn't lean forward on it. They knew it was coming, and then had to deal with it afterwards. And I think this is an opportunity for us to lean forward on these things. So we talk about the passenger vehicles, but look, it's getting bigger, right? Every vehicle you see here is an electric vehicle, right? Even the fire trucks, right? You got Pierce on the bottom, Rickenbacker, a couple of different, FedEx, UPS, even tow and recovery vehicles, right, are coming out now. So the bigger the vehicle, the bigger the battery, bigger the fire, right? So we have to kind of prepare for that. What I just said, right? Now, what's cool about this picture is it shows you the buses, right? And buses, electric buses, transit, commuter, they're out there now, and agencies are looking to buy more and more and more of these things. Now, to recharge your electric bus, you don't pull it up to a 120 volt wall socket and plug it in, right? So what we're seeing in that top photo are the charging stations back in the yard, and the bus almost has a pantograph to go up and make contact. And down the road, and it's even being constructed in some areas, right through your town, they're using electric buses through your town or city. Every couple of bus stops or a couple of miles, they're going to, when that bus stops at the bus stop, it's going to have a pantograph station where it just raises up, makes contact, and recharges the battery right there at the bus stop. A lot of light rail trains are doing that right now. So that technology exists, and it's coming quick. So if this is your electric vehicle fire, right, how does this affect him? It's in the yard, right? Well, the end run of this story is every one of those buses were lost, and every one of them's, pushing $750,000. And there was no stopping it. It just kept walking. And of course, no matter where the yard is, you get a fire going like this, and fire, emergency services, everyone's coming. And when you get there, you want to start shutting down or blocking roads or laying lines in the street, supply lines. So traffic incident management, yeah, it still applies even though the fire is off the road. You're still, just the response to it, is going to dictate some type of traffic management. So the practices for extinguishment and those challenges, I told you those things are sealed units. They're made to be protected from the outside elements, including water, right? Especially water. And there have been several studies and and tests and a lot of research done with extinguishing the EV fire. And in your basic sedan, right, and passenger vehicle, right, it's found that, you know, you charge inch 3/4 line or whatever it is you're using, and you start throwing water at this fire, and it's blowing out of there like almost like a blowtorch, if you would. That's how it blows out the sides and the bottom of these vehicles. And as much as 90% of the water that you're throwing towards it isn't even reaching the seat of the fire, right? Just simply because of the design of the pans, you know. And there may not even be a pan breach, right? It could be a pressure vent that's going off. And you're throwing water in the direction of the heat, but you're really doing nothing except creating a lot of runoff and exhausting a lot of resources. So, you know, is it a trash fire at this point? Yeah, it could be, but you still have to deal with it. You know, our internal combustion engines, you know, we know eventually fire would go out, right? But in electric vehicle fires, it's not necessarily the case. It could burn for hours. I mean, just the other day, there was a fire company dumped 12,000 gallons of water on this particular fire, and it lit off 2 more times en route to the storage yard. You know, so, you know, pre-planning it, and what are we going to do when we're out there on the highways and byways, you know, where water's a precious commodity. You know, so these are things that in your pre-fire plans and pre-action plans, you know, need to start happening kind of now, right? And we know because first off, electric vehicles, battery powered, you know, they have to be constructed as light as possible, with the exception of the chassis area, you know, where they have to survive crash tests and all. Everything else is composites and plastics. So once you get this battery going, right, this vehicle is going to light off. It's a heavy fire load. It's going to burn hot. It's going to burn for a while, and we're going to have to deal with it and pre-plan for it. Now, I'm going to tell you this is a link here, and I'm told that you folks out there that can see this, you know, if you can click on this yourselves and get a much cleaner look at this. It's a video. It's a YouTube video. Can you do that for me, Adam?
Yeah, Joe, I'm going to bring it up on my screen here, and I'll play the audio through my phone, so this will play a little differently for others. And so here we go.
Yeah, electric bus fire. Now watch. Paris. This is in Paris, by the way. Yeah, out here. The one thing you don't see, all right, Adam. Yeah. Now, here's one thing. When I first watched that, I thought, wow, right, that went quick. And then I had to look at it a couple of other times. And, you know, that bus went from a couple of sparks on the roof to fully involved, fully consumed within just a couple of minutes, because we're talking downtown Paris, and there's not a fire or emergency services unit anywhere to be found in that video. So, you know, they're not that far away, right? So it happened really, really quick. And you could see, you know, of course, at that point, the bus is a total loss, but it's still going to burn. But what, even more importantly, look at the exposures of those buildings. And you know darn well when you look at that column of smoke, you know some of those buildings are taking on some of that smoke. So you're probably going to have fire alarms. It's just a mess. So you have to prepare. We have to prepare for that type of event. And it's going to be an extended event, and it could be as we just saw, in downtown metropolis, or it could be way out in the hinterland somewheres. And when you're in the hinterland, right, water's the precious commodity. And, looking at a tanker strike force here, right, where we're laying out portable water tanks, drafting water, water supplies, shuttling water. This could become a norm, right, out on the roadway somewhere. Now, when you need copious amounts of water, right, you have to either do it in a shuttle fashion or some other means. But you also have to understand you're creating runoff, right? And I know of a case in a towing recovery yard where there's a electric vehicle fire, copious amounts of water was utilized. The local environmental enforcement agency was monitoring, channels, heard this going on, came there, declared the lithium-ion runoff as hazardous. The whole process of damming and diking, and then the recovery yard owner had to have 6 inches of soil removed everywhere that the runoff touched. So they almost had to have their lot redone. And it was gravel and dirt. So, yeah, it was quite an escapade for them. So we know what the challenge is, right? We know there are responders. And by responders, I mean, relief crews. Think relief crew, right? You might have enough for your engine out the door, but if that engine's going to be out there for multiple hours, right? You need relief crews, and the equipment, the apparatus, there are areas out there where it's 45-minute response time to the scene, so, when you need help, you got to call early and call often, as they say, right? Because water, is right now, that's the preferred method. But we know, right, and we know the isolation of energy, once it's lit off, it's a moot point. If it's not lit off and you have to do extrication operations, well, yeah, you got to de-energize this thing, and you got to look it up, and you got to find it, and you got to get it right. Europe is, this is their solution to passenger vehicle, electric vehicle fires. And they bring this unit to the scene, fill it full of water and a little bit of foam, and they just dunk the vehicle down in there. It has a tarp that goes over top, and that's how it gets hauled away to the yard. But you're not going to put a bus in there, or a UPS truck in there, or anything else. And that I think that's where we're lacking our attention or our focus. On bigger vehicles, smaller vehicles, I think we'll work that out. It's the larger vehicles that are really going to present some problems once they light off. Now, and I talked about after the crash, right, and turning any wheels, right. The simple rotation of any undamaged wheel could cause thermal runaway, could cause a reignition, and they've occurred numerous times. They recommend storage lots, right, to isolate EV crash vehicles from other vehicles and buildings by at least 50 feet. In a recovery yard, can you even imagine 50 feet for one vehicle in all directions? So some of them are building 3 walls, a 3-sided concrete bin, and they just store them inside of there in order to conserve some space. And we know that there's been reignition several weeks into the storage yard. Where there was no initial fire. So, there's a lot of issues that are taking place. And those batteries don't just show up, right? I mean, they don't just magically appear at the manufacturer, right? They have to get there, and they're being transported, typically by truck, big truck, and typically not a threat, right? But a 53-foot, tractor trailer can hold, hundreds, if not tens of thousands of individual lithium-ion batteries and battery trays, and they're handled as standard freight in massive quantities. So forbid that there's an incident involving a tractor trailer hauling lithium-ion batteries that's involved in fire, because then that's going to make the news. So accessing the seat of the fire is going to be the challenge. Water is going to be the challenge. And personnel. So, there's multiple agencies out there that are investigating and researching methods of extinguishing and cutting down on the timeline. But for us, it's all about being out there on the road with this thing and having a plan. You know, what is the plan to deal with this, and pre-plan it and try to handle it the same way we would any other hazards. You know, there's an agency out there that I participated in. Angela just put a message in there, and she invited me to a webinar, and I sat in on there. And that individual agency said that in the next 3 to 5 years there'll be 300 to 500 new manufacturers, makes, and models of electric vehicles on our roads. So, you know, we need to step it up, right? We need to get with it and prepare for it. So think TIM. When you think TIM and start thinking electric vehicle fires and the challenges that go with it, you know, now's the time. Now's the time to lean forward and get ready. And that's what I have on EVs, and I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep educating myself and stay on top of this. And if you have anything that you'd like to share with others, please do. You know, use our email, put it in the chat pod, and you know, let's just get ready, because you know the future isn't coming. The future's here when it comes to electric vehicles. So we need to get with it. So with that, I appreciate your time. And Paul, I guess back to you.
Yep. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, stay tuned, everybody, on this. Right? We've been alarmed. Jim, Joe, and I have been alarmed about what we hear about the pending issues and about the increase of EVs. So stay tuned, but prepare, as Joe was saying. Next up is Jerry Prete. We got to know Jerry with the research project that Joe leads on Rural TIM, and he provided you know, some great insight for things that we don't often think about. He became an early star in that national team that we put together for the Rural TIM perspective, so that we could you know, share with the rest of the nation. So we appreciate Jerry, and he's got a lot to share and some new cool things they're actually doing in Montana. So with that, I'll be quiet and pass it along to you, Jerry.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Disregard the large mastiff in the background. The postman must have just come by, so he might bark a little bit as we go. You know, I've been involved in the fire service for 32 years, got involved in TIM actually through VFIS years and years ago, and it just kind of morphed from there. Would we deal with what's going on in here? You know, we were one of the pilot programs for the new 4-hour TIM program, and again, brought around due to a tragedy. MHP was the one that actually ran the program through 2020. Our champion was Alex Betts, who unfortunately got cancer and passed away. And as a result of that, the Highway Patrol really had no one that wanted to champion it anymore. And I just couldn't let the program die. So I asked my boss if we could take it over, and we did, and we started looking at some things as we went through. Here in Montana, easily over 80% of the time, traffic control is handled by fire. And amazingly enough, in rural Montana, fire will do traffic control for even a tow recovery, because we have resources and we have like one trooper for 4 counties. The county I work out of is 3,800 square miles with 70 miles wide by 50 miles long. So there's a lot of paved roads and unpaved roads. And we have a trooper that covers 4 of those, and a deputy on duty at each county. So they just don't have the capability. So we worked with the fire service part of it first when we started looking at how do we change it and how do we make it better. It wasn't so much change it, but better. And what that resulted from is my job as a regional trainer. I put about 75,000 miles a year on just in my work truck. I have front and rear dash cams. I drive through a fair amount of incidents. And I was going through areas where we had presented the program, and we weren't seeing them implementing the program as we presented it through the program, through the PowerPoint. And it just got us looking and doing at things. And so in the fire school, we concentrate on the do. things that we want you to have when we have a process. I loved Ohio's video program. We're getting ready to shoot our own training video on the 2-lane and then 4-lane. We've been a little delayed due to a lengthy training season, and then we just are coming out of a drought which resulted in massive flooding. We are now dealing with flooding up in northwestern Montana, where infrastructure is being wiped out at an ungodly basis. So it's kind of delayed our setup a little bit. And one of the things we know is everybody that's involved in TIM, they're a doer. They don't sit behind a desk, with the exception of our dispatchers. They go out there and do things. And we know through, we're fortunate that we have a doctorate, a PhD guy that does all about human learning and human psyche, actually teaches internationally, Dr. Brian Crandall. And so we learn a lot about how humans learn, especially adult learners. And so the video portion is really important to show them what does right look like. We know that if we allow someone to do something wrong for the very first time, it can take as many as 30 additional repetitions to get it right because of that first imprint. And I guess I can relate that to your first impression. When you first meet somebody, that first impression stays with you, and it takes a long time to change somebody's first impression of you. So that's the thing we know. So we want to show them what right looks like, and then we do what we call sequencing. We make you walk through it. You're not actually touching the fire gear. You're not doing anything else. We're just looking at the video. These are the processes. These are the steps. Let's walk through it until we can do the gross motor skills well, and then we'll do what we call a slow live run, where we actually put all the gear on, do everything, but we don't let them make a mistake while they do it. Well, we applied that to the TIM part of it also. And what we found is we started a hands-on 2-lane scenario that was easier to expand because we have way more 2-lane than we do interstate or 4-lane highways, that we could easily expand out to how to deal with a 4-lane road. And by walking them through this basic one and then understanding how they could expand it, we got some really, really good feedback. We probably took us 6 months to get this thing perfected. Part of it was we developed a minimum equipment list. We were shocked at how many agencies, didn't matter whether it was fire, law, EMS in particular. TOW usually is fairly well equipped. Obviously DOT is very well equipped. We're ill-equipped to handle the proper amount of notification and cones, and departments that didn't even have signs for flaggers. We were just like, what? How do you not have a stop slow sign? That kind of seems, if you only have 2-lane highway, that would be a critical piece of equipment for me. I realize we have hands, but it makes it a lot, especially at night, some things. So each one of the trainers, we have a pickup truck that's assigned to us. We carry a ton of equipment with us. And we bring everything that would be needed to set up a basic traffic zone so that they can see what it looks like. And then we've combed every Tuesday. We put out a weekly email distribution list from the fire school, and on certain days there's certain things that are added at the end. On Tuesdays we list every grant that we know that's available locally, regionally, and nationally, and then along with any training things that are coming up that are outside of the ordinary. We pretty much have our program now. When we do this training, we still strongly encourage and usually have representation from fire, EMS, law, and towing is pretty good. DOT here does an excellent job of getting all their people through it at their locations. We've done some work with them, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And so this time of year is actually when we start slowing down on our TIM. A lot of that has to do with the fact of we want them to drive through their scene when it's dark. We're not going to tell you what's wrong. We want you to see it. So, our program allows us to adopt, but if we can get it so that after they've done 4 to 6 evolutions, okay, now let's get in our vehicles, let's drive through your traffic zone, because we'll be on an obscure piece of road that we can take ownership of that still may have some traffic, but we can control that, and then let them see what does my normal traffic zone look like with the lighting that I have on my vehicles, and what should we look at adding or reducing to that situation. And that sets a very big imprint on them. We've gotten to the point where many of our law enforcement agencies understand that once fire, or if fire already is on scene, that squad car that's parked right up there between the fire truck and the incident, if it's not a vehicle fire, doesn't need to have any warning lights on. Nobody can see them till they're there, and at night in particular, all it does is make our scene more difficult to work in, because, you know, police and fire seem to have this competition to see who can have the most LED lights on their vehicle as they're parked and going. A lot of things we do, we hand out a 3x5 card. Each card is a different color, so it makes it easier for them to keep track of. And so every participant gets a copy of this card, and it's two-sided. The thing on drive intentionally really came to focus because between 2020, well, the winter of 2020 and 2021, we had 7 incidents where the responding fire apparatus actually caused a crash or were involved in a crash prior to arriving on scene. Kind of defeats the purpose for what we're going to do, so we talk about how to do that. Connect. With the connect part, one of the things we know is we have a frequency. It's one of the national frequencies. We call it gold. We use a lot of colors here. And gold is a statewide mutual aid frequency that is allowed to be used by almost any agency. So TOW can use it. MHP, all of them have it. MHP is actually required to monitor it, our highway patrol system. But police, fire, EMS, school buses, DOT, we all have it. And so by talking about running our incidents on gold, now when a tow operator is showing up on scene, they can radio into command, ask where they want them to be. And there's been multiple times now in the small rural settings where when they've arrived, we weren't ready for them, but we asked them, we didn't get our sign on the other end of the incident because we were just short on personnel. So having them go to the other side of the 2-lane incident, put their sign out, and then find a field entrance, something to park and stage, just maybe with some lights activated to provide some of that advanced warning, fills that niche while we're going through. So we work better together. And then we talk about the rest, which is self-explanatory. We tried to look at this placing so that at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can look at this or I can regurgitate this without having to think too much. So we don't talk so much about feet as we do steps. I can remember 10 steps. I can remember 20 steps, 30. So if I need to make it bigger, I just got to make it bigger by the number of steps. And we did steps because when we talked about stride and stuff, it just got confusing. And it's close enough. I told them, you're not going to see me coming out and taking a measuring wheel unless there's an incident coming out. So on the back side is kind of a diagram, and it's a both interstate and 2-lane. We're looking at probably changing that to a 2-lane specific and a 4-lane specific to do. We felt we didn't want to have too many cars, but we think this is a little too convoluted. And in the bottom corner, you'll notice it says not to scale. And obviously, you can't show the downstream end of it because it's a 3x5 card. But it gives them an idea of how this works and the why. And this is all based on what we talk about. This scene is based on a mile of clear, straight road, clear visibility, roads are dry, everything is perfect. Any of that changes, you make it bigger, period. Nighttime, you make it bigger because I got to give my drivers more time to react. But they have a template to start with to make bigger. So we have found it to be extremely effective in getting the message out, giving these cards out, having everybody understand what their role is, where their role is, where we would like them to park. You know, we do have a note in there about leaving in a PDF. So there'll be available a 20-page PDF training material that we leave with each agency so that they can regurgitate this to their new members or whatever they need as they go. One of our TIM champions, Terry Morrison, which was he was part of the initial group that started it, designed this sign. It's got Velcro on either side for the arrows. And especially in the daytime, this sign is a force multiplier and an extremely, extremely effective deal on a 4-lane road. And so Bozeman is probably one of our busiest areas in the state and rapidly growing, so traffic is becoming a huge nightmare. And you want to know how effective it is? This is a picture he took. You can see the skid marks in the bottom left corner. Their crash is just past the bridge. That sign is a mile down the road, and that little speck you see in the passing lane is a lone state trooper. And there's not a cone on the road, but we have compliance. We told them what we wanted them to do. They figured it out. They do it. So this sign is an unbelievable force multiplier for us on our 4-lane highways. Tragedy struck right after I took over the program in 2020. These two gentlemen, Nick Visser on the left as you're looking at it, and Casey Allen on the right, who I had worked with 4 days prior to that out on a highway incident, were struck and killed. And so with that, the opportunity came for us to go to our legislative session. Fortunately, the session was shortly after this happened, and we were able to enhance our law. There were some issues. We're going to do a little correction this next one, but one of the things talks about is a reasonable, lower, and safe speed. That can actually be picked up on a video camera instead of having to have a radar gun to know if they were going too fast or not. It did give us the permission to set up temporary speed zones, which we spent a lot of time talking with DOT. What if the fire department's going to set up a temporary speed zone? What kind of signs do we need? What do we need to do? So, but not everybody's doing that because that's manpower and cost difficult. Big talk about penalties. Montana is not a huge fine state for traffic penalties. And if we're honest with ourselves, 30% of our drivers don't have a valid license anyway. So we went with our deal here, and imprisonment of not more than 90 days, $100 to $500 fine, first conviction. Second conviction is most important. You cannot waive the 10 days in jail. You do go to jail. Judges cannot suspend it. Then obviously $500 to $1,000. The death one, we feel are going to use a different deal, but it's there. The important thing is a violation is reckless endangerment. Reckless endangerment is critical because that actually is the same as a DUI in the eyes of your insurance. It's also a serious traffic violation. So those of you who have a CDL know that that's not a good ticket to get. So those two things have really gone and made it a stronger law, and we're working on the public education portion to go from there. Is what we're doing working? Well, last year marked the first time we didn't have a fatality in any division anywhere across since 2014. We don't have a lot out here, thank God. We're fairly, rural state, but we have a ton of traffic, so it surprises me. We did finally get a hands-on portion in our law enforcement academy. So we go up there with an instructor from the fire school, we have a trooper instructor, and we go to their training track, and we bring in fire departments, an ambulance, tow companies, and we can set it up so they understand TIM as it relates to when fire's there, which is 2 events, a crash, well, 3. Crash, hazmat, or a fire. And then we also work with them on how they can be safer when they're out there as a single traffic unit or maybe a double. We really, thanks to the DOT inviting us in, we've done a lot of work with MDT in looking at their programs, talking about how they can do things and just some things they can do to make life simpler. I spent 3 years building roads. I get that. We've gone to the tow company, to the tow conferences, and presented TIM there and talked to the tow operators. I can't stress how important it is to be able to do this at night so that they can understand they got a work area, but when they light up that big 60-inch LED light bar so they can see their work area aiming to the back, who can see what's going on as they approach the scene? The fire service, we've gone to a lot of those rechargeable battery lights that come with their own stands and stuff, and we put light focused where we want it. And so we talked to them about that. And then a D-driver presentation. I started doing that myself 6 years ago, at our local high school, and now I've expanded it into sort of a statewide program. Basically talks about the move over law, the D-drivers, and then I talk about airbags and seatbelt safety, showing some pretty graphic pictures and videos. I mean, not obscene, but enough to get their attention, especially like feet on the dash. And then I go through 3 incidents that have happened in my career And the last one, I can talk about it all day long till I see that first picture, but basically 3 teenagers were killed because of a teen drunk. One died in my arms. He had been dating my daughter for 2.5 years. I knew that guy, you know. So we've had good success with that. Where are we going? I see we're actually, somebody corrected it because we're at 64.9%. Our steering committee wants 70% by the end. We're looking at another Train the Trainer this fall, and probably what's most amazing is how our interagencies, all the disciplines, how they're working together. You know, how I get buy-in, aside from the post hours for from the law enforcement, is the fact that the only other class I've ever sat in that had law, fire, EMS, all those together is active shooter. So being able to understand everybody's roles and go through. But what really works for us is being able to make those connections, especially in a non-urgent situation, understanding how we can communicate, understanding where we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to do, and how. I guess the last piece, I have a couple minutes, is Move Over Montana. Move Over Montana will be 8 years old July 8th. It's a Facebook page that is now a nonprofit. It started by a trooper's wife after he got hit. Amazingly enough, almost 5 years to the date, he got hit again. We decided to form a nonprofit for 3 purposes, or 2 main purposes: education, public education, education to responders, and then we want to provide funding. So funding for departments that need equipment, and then the last goal is funding for families that have been affected by a struck by. One of our major goals for the end of this year is to get billboards up at the interstate entrances to each of our state, which is a lot easier for us than most because we only have 1 coming in from each side. One will show what the law is. The second is going to show the penalties. We feel that public education piece of understanding the ramifications of not slowing down is going to sink in and hopefully get better compliance. So, you know, in a nutshell, we have been really working hard with all of these agencies. We understand that we've got to get out and do it. The PowerPoints are great. I was a strong, avid believer, but we're seeing a much better takeaway from the hands-on portion. And then the last thing is, at the end of each, we send to their training officer, their chiefs, or whoever their heads of their association, the links to the responder safety webinars and webs, and tell them to get out there, do those classes, make them a requirement for you to have to do X number of hours or whatever sessions you want them to do for your department, so that they understand how it goes. I mean, that page is phenomenal, and I know a number of places. And again, we have a volunteer retirement program, requires hours. This is a way for them to mandate these hours and obtain them at their pace and go. So we've been tying all the pictures we can together and trying to make sure everybody gets this out there. You know, if you have questions, if you're looking for things, get a hold of me. That's my state phone number and my state email. Our towing association here, I see Joanne Blyton just answered somebody's question about where they are. You can get a hold of Joanne Blyton because our tow association does it. And then we've had a number of other just fire equipment services that are locally based in Montana that have copied the sign. I think Terry made a mistake by not patenting that bad boy and making it and putting it out there. You know, for $350, $400, it's a pretty darn good deal. We have to go with the signs that have the springs in them and stuff because we have this thing called wind, and it doesn't stop here very often. And so if you don't have those signs and some sandbags, you'll get your sign all right, just somewhere a mile or 2 down the road. So, you know, that's our goal. That's our program in a nutshell. I was very happy to work with the Rural TIM program. I think they developed an outstanding program that'll be helpful to those of us that don't have people.
Hey, thanks, Jerry.
You know, we still have counties that have miles of interstate with no cell service. You're welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. You know, there's just so many great takeaways from that. Great presentation, and you know, great presentation from all three speakers. But for Montana, I just wanted to you know, that Velcro sign. We did a little bit of research on the move over law out there, and they're seeing just anecdotally now, they're seeing a very high percentage of moving over just by slapping that Velcro arrow on there compared to other situations where the state police out there are seeing maybe 50%, you know, estimated, again, anecdotally, observation. They're seeing about 50% move over with the signs. The towers are saying that they're seeing 90% or above compliance with the move over. So could it be that we just need a simple arrow? The other thing is the move over law. Those are the toughest laws in the country, I think. Jail time. So if anyone knows of any other state that has jail time associated with the move over laws, we would love to hear it. But geez, and the other big takeaway that work you're doing, Jerry, is just phenomenal. But that the D-driver presentations you're doing in schools, man, that is heroes work. So because I think that's the problem, right? When we're seeing these increased fatalities and responder struck bys, is this whole distracted thing. And I won't even get going on what I observe on the highway, and I've been on the road a lot lately, and what I've been observing, people looking at their phones going 95 on the high-speed lane. So anyways, thanks to everyone. We're 4 minutes over. Sorry we don't have time for questions. If we missed a question that you need answered, all the speakers are more than happy to answer for you, or Jim, Joe, and I. Thanks again. Great presentations by all three. I think this was a great talking, Tim. See you next month on the 4th Wednesday at 1:30 in July. Thank you.